All right, so imagine this. You get a phone call, and a voice says, "We've got your son Voss. Give us $1 million, or he dies."
Oh, wow.
Just like that, your world changes, right?
Right.
I mean, talk about primal fear.
Yeah, no kidding. I can't even imagine. But what's so crazy about this scenario that Voss talks about in his book, Never Split the Difference, is who's on the other end of the line. It's not just some random criminal mastermind. It's a group of negotiation professors from Harvard Law School.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
And he was an FBI hostage negotiator. We're talking about a high-stakes situation.
Yeah.
And it's not even just about the money or the threat. It's that these are the people who teach negotiation for a living. They wrote the book on it, literally.
Exactly. It really throws a wrench into this whole idea that negotiation is just cold, hard logic. Like you just lay out the facts and boom, you get what you want.
Yeah, and that's what I think is so interesting about Voss's book.
Yeah.
He takes what he learned in these life or death situations and shows how it applies to everyday life. I mean, we're all negotiating all the time, right? Whether it's at work, with our families, even just trying to get a better deal on something.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times we go into those negotiations with this idea that we just need to be super logical.
Yeah.
Like if we present our argument perfectly, the other person will just have to agree.
Right, like we're all Spock from Star Trek.
Yeah.
Just pure logic, no emotions.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not how people actually work. I mean, think about it. We all make decisions based on our emotions all the time.
Oh, totally. And, there's a ton of research on this. Like Kahneman and Tversky's work on cognitive biases, they basically show that our brains are wired to take shortcuts. And those shortcuts often lead to decisions that aren't totally rational.
Yeah, and so when you're in a negotiation and you're just focused on the logic on that system too, think like Voss calls it, you're missing this whole other layer, the emotional side, the gut reactions that are driving the other person's decisions.
Exactly. It's like trying to win a chess game, but you can only see half the board. You're never going to make the best moves.
So if humans are so irrational, how did the FBI handle these hostage situations? I mean, you can't exactly reason with someone who's holding a gun to someone's head.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what's really fascinating is that the FBI actually realized this. They saw that the old school negotiation tactics, the stuff they teach at those fancy Ivy League schools, it wasn't working in these high-pressure situations.
So what did they do? They didn't just throw their hands up and say, oh, well, humans are irrational, so guess we can't negotiate with them. They actually started looking at things differently.
They did. They started incorporating ideas from psychology counseling, even crisis intervention. It was all about understanding the emotional state of the person they were dealing with.
And the crazy thing is it actually worked. This more emotionally intelligent approach actually led to more successful outcomes in these hostage situations.
So what we're going to do today in this deep dive is try to understand how this works. How can we use these same principles of emotional intelligence to be better negotiators in our own lives?
And it's not just about hostage situations, right? I mean, these ideas apply to any kind of negotiation, whether it's getting a raise, buying a car, even just resolving an argument with your partner.
Absolutely. We're going to go through some of the specific techniques that Voss outlines in his book, stuff like active listening, tactical empathy, the power of saying no, and even how to deal with those really tough negotiators.
And it's all about understanding how to navigate those tricky emotional waters that are always present in any kind of negotiation.
And speaking of engaging content and practical insights that can really help you,
Yeah.
welcome to the Audiobook Quiver YouTube channel. We are so glad to have you here. If you're enjoying this deep dive and you want to learn more about how to level up your life through the power of books, make sure to hit that like button below.
Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of our future videos, and turn on that notification bell so you'll be the first to know when we drop a new deep dive.
We're building a community of lifelong learners here, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. All right, now let's jump back into our discussion of never split the difference. One of the most powerful tools that Voss talks about is active listening. And this involves things like mirroring, using silence strategically, and what he calls the late-night FM DJ voice.
So let's break this down a bit. These might seem like simple things, but they're actually based on some pretty deep psychological principles.
Right, so let's start with mirroring.
Yeah.
This is basically when you subtly copy aspects of the other person's communication, like their body language, their tone of voice, even just repeating the last few words they said.
And it's funny because we do this naturally all the time. It's like an unconscious way of showing that we're paying attention and that we're on the same page.
Yeah, it's like when you're having a good conversation with someone and you find yourself kind of nodding along or mirroring their posture. It just feels natural.
Right. And Voss says that when you do this consciously in a negotiation, it can actually help to build rapport and trust with the other person. It's like you're sending the subtle signal that you're alike.
And it doesn't have to be anything super obvious. It could be as simple as repeating the last 1 to 3 words that they said in a questioning tone.
Yeah. Voss gives this example of an employee asking his boss for some copies, and the boss is kind of hesitant. The employee just mirrors back, I'm sorry, 2 copies. And it's amazing how that simple repetition can actually encourage the other person to explain themselves more.
And that's the key.
Yeah.
It's not about being manipulative. It's about showing that you're really listening and trying to understand their perspective.
There was this study with waiters that Voss talks about. The waiters who mirrored their customers' orders ended up getting bigger tips than the ones who didn't. And it's not like the customers were consciously thinking, oh, this waiter is mirroring me, I'm going to give him a bigger tip. It was just this unconscious thing that made them feel more connected to the waiter.
I see what you mean. So mirroring is like a way of building rapport without even having to say anything super deep.
Exactly. It's all about those subtle cues that create a sense of connection. Now, another powerful tool that Voss talked about is tactical empathy. And this is where you really start to get inside the other person's head.
Right. So tactical empathy is all about understanding and acknowledging the other person's emotions. And a key part of this is something called labeling.
Labeling is basically when you put a name to the emotion that you're seeing in the other person. So you might say something like, it seems like you're frustrated right now, or it looks like you don't want to go back to jail.
Yeah, that last example is pretty intense. It shows how powerful labeling can be, especially in those high-stakes situations.
Right. But even in everyday situations, labeling can be really helpful. It shows the other person that you're paying attention to their emotions and that you're trying to understand where they're coming from.
And it can actually help to de-escalate a situation, too. When you name an emotion out loud, it often loses some of its power. It's like you're letting the air out of a balloon.
Exactly. And Voss gives this example of a guy named TJ who worked for the New York Giants. He was in charge of collecting payments from season ticket holders who were behind on their bills.
Oh, wow. So like collections.
Yeah, and his initial approach was super aggressive and impersonal. He was just focused on getting the money, and he wasn't really considering the fan situation.
I bet that didn't go over too well.
No, it didn't. His collection rate was terrible. But then he changed his approach. He started acknowledging the fans' passion for the team, and he started labeling the tough economic times that a lot of people were facing.
So instead of just demanding the money, he was showing that he understood where they were coming from.
Right, and it's amazing how that small change made a huge difference.
Wow.
His collection rate went way up because the fans felt like he actually cared.
That makes sense. People are more likely to cooperate when they feel like they're being heard and understood.
Absolutely. And there's this other example that Voss talks about where an instructor is about to do this role-playing exercise with his students, and he knows that some of them are going to be nervous about it.
So what did he do? Did he just ignore their nerves and power through?
No, he actually acknowledged them right up front. He said something like, I know that some of you are dreading this exercise, and that's okay.
Wow. So he basically labeled their fear for them.
Yeah, and it was really effective. By acknowledging the students' anxiety, he actually made it less scary for them, and they were more willing to participate in the exercise.
That's really interesting. It's like by naming the negative emotion, you can actually take away some of its power.
Okay, so we've talked about mirroring and labeling. Now let's move on to something that might seem a little counterintuitive, the power of saying no.
No. I mean, that's usually seen as a negative thing, right? Like it shuts down the conversation.
Yeah, that's how we usually think about it. But Voss says that no can actually be a really powerful tool in negotiation. It gives the person saying no a sense of control and autonomy.
And it can help to uncover the other person's real motivations, too.
Exactly. Think about it when someone's trying to pressure you into buying something or agreeing to something you don't really want. Your first instinct is probably to say no.
Yeah, that's true. It's like a natural defense mechanism.
Right. And Voss says that we should embrace that instinct. He tells this story about when he was first trying to get into the FBI's crisis negotiation team. And the advice he got was to volunteer at a suicide hotline.
That seems a little strange. What does that have to do with hostage negotiation?
Well, the point was to learn how to deal with people who are in extreme emotional distress, people who are saying no to life itself.
Oh, I see. So it was about learning how to really listen to understand the reasons behind that? No.
Exactly. And Voss says that there are actually different types of yeses. There's the counterfeit yes, where someone's just saying yes to please you or to avoid conflict.
Okay, and then there's the confirmation yes, which is more like an acknowledgement, like, oh yeah, I hear you.
Right, and then there's the commitment yes, which is the one you really want. This is where someone's saying yes because they're truly on board with the idea.
So how do you get to that commitment? Yes.
Well, Voss says that one of the best ways is to actually encourage the other person to say no early on in the conversation.
Really? How does that work?
Well, by asking questions that are designed to elicit a no response, you can actually uncover the other person's objections and concerns.
And then you can address those concerns directly, which can ultimately lead to a more genuine agreement.
Exactly. Voss gives this example of a fundraiser who's trying to get a donation from a wealthy guy named Mr. Smith. And instead of asking Mr. Smith if he supports their cause, which would probably lead to a polite but meaningless yes, the fundraiser asks him, "Do you feel that if things continue as they are, our organization will be able to achieve its goals?"
Oh, that's clever. It's almost like forcing him to say no.
Yeah, and when Mr. Smith says no, it opens up this whole conversation about his specific concerns and what it would take for him to change his mind.
I see. So it's not about trying to avoid the no. It's about using the no to get to a deeper level of understanding.
Exactly. And once you've gotten past the no, you can start working towards that real commitment. Yes.
Okay, so we've talked about mirroring labeling and the power of no. Now, what about that magical phrase?
That's right.
What's so special about that?
Well, Voss says that
That's right.
is the holy grail of negotiation. It means that you've truly connected with the other person on a deep level.
It's more than just a yes. It's like a total understanding.
Exactly. It's like you've seen into their soul and you've reflected back to them their own deepest beliefs.
And when you get to,
Yeah, that's right.
Voss says that you've basically won the negotiation.
Well, it's not quite that simple, but it definitely means that you're on the right track.
He tells this story about a football coach named Brandon who was struggling with a particular aspect of his coaching. And he couldn't figure out why until someone said to him, "You seem to think it's unmanly to dodge a block."
And Brandon's immediate response was,
That's right.
it was like this huge light bulb went off in his head. He suddenly realized that he had this unconscious belief that was holding him back.
Wow, so by simply labeling Brandon's belief, the other person was able to help him break through this mental barrier.
Exactly. And once Brandon was able to see that belief clearly, he was able to let go of it and start coaching in a more effective way.
So it's like,
That's
is this moment of self-discovery where the other person helps you to see yourself more clearly.
Yeah, and Voss gives a bunch of other examples of how
That's right.
can be used in negotiation. Like, there's this pharmaceutical rep who's trying to get a doctor to prescribe his new drug.
That's a tough one. Doctors are bombarded with pharmaceutical reps all the time.
I know, but this rep was really good at using active listening and tactical empathy to build rapport with the doctor.
So he wasn't just pushing his product, he was actually trying to understand the doctor's needs.
Exactly. And eventually he was able to summarize the doctor's concerns in a way that made the doctor say, "That's right."
And from there, it was much easier to close the deal.
Right, because the doctor felt like the rep really understood him. And there's this other example of a student who's interviewing for a job.
Oh, I remember that one. The student was really nervous and she kept saying all the wrong things.
Yeah, but then she started using some of the techniques that Voss talks about, like mirroring and labeling.
And she was able to turn the interview around.
She was. And she ended up getting the job offer because the interviewer felt like she was a good fit for the company culture.
Wow. So these techniques really can work even in those high-pressure situations.
Absolutely. But there's one more thing that we need to talk about. And that's the idea that no deal is better than a bad deal.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's easy to get caught up in the heat of the moment and just want to make a deal.
I know. But Voss says that it's really important to walk away if the deal isn't right for you,
Even if you've already invested a lot of time and energy,
especially if you've already invested a lot of time and energy.
because a bad deal can come back to haunt you later on.
Exactly. And Voss says that one of the best ways to avoid making a bad deal is to really understand the other side's religion.
Their religion. What do you mean by that?
He's not talking about actual religion. He's talking about their worldview, their values, their core beliefs.
Oh, I see. So it's about understanding what really motivates them, what's really important to them.
Exactly. And Voss gives this example of the Haiti kidnappings, where he and his team were trying to negotiate the release of some hostages.
That must have been intense.
It was. And Voss says that one of the things they focused on was the language that the kidnappers were using.
They were analyzing their words.
Yeah, they were looking for clues about the kidnappers' motivations, their level of organization, the seriousness of their threats.
So it was like they were trying to get inside the kidnappers' heads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by understanding the kidnappers' religion, they were able to negotiate a successful outcome.
So it's not just about listening to what people say, it's about understanding why they're saying it.
Right. And Voss also warns against projection. which is when you assume that the other person thinks the same way you do.
Like when you think that they share your values or your priorities.
Exactly. And that can be really dangerous in negotiation because it can lead you to make assumptions about what the other person is willing to do or accept.
So it's really important to try to see things from their perspective.
Absolutely. And Voss says that one of the most powerful words in negotiation is fair.
Fair. I mean, that seems pretty obvious.
Yeah, but it's more than just obvious. It's actually deeply ingrained in our psychology. Humans have a very strong sense of fairness, and we hate to feel like we're being treated unfairly.
That makes sense. I mean, nobody likes to feel like they're getting ripped off.
Exactly. And Voss says that this sense of fairness can be even stronger than our desire for economic gain.
Really? Like we'd rather get nothing than get a deal that we feel is unfair.
Yeah, there's this study called the ultimatum game where one person gets a certain amount of money and they have to offer a portion of it to another person.
Okay, and if the other person accepts the offer, they both get to keep the money.
Right, but if the other person rejects the offer, they both get nothing.
So it's like a take it or leave it situation.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that people will often reject offers that they perceive as being unfair, even if it means that they'll end up with nothing.
So it's like their sense of fairness outweighs their desire for money.
Yeah, exactly. And Voss says that this is something that you need to be aware of in negotiation. You always want to make sure that the other person feels like they're being treated fairly.
Because if they don't, they might just walk away from the deal.
And then you'll both end up with nothing.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
But there are a couple more things that I want to mention before we wrap up. One is the importance of calibrated questions.
Yeah, calibrated questions are basically open-ended questions that start with how or what.
And Voss says that these questions are really powerful because they give the other person a sense of control.
Right. Like instead of saying, will you do this, you could say, how would you go about doing this?
And that subtle shift in language can make a big difference.
It can, because it makes the other person feel like they're part of the solution.
And it can also help you to uncover information that you might not have gotten otherwise.
Exactly. And Voss also talks about the importance of identifying the level 2 players in a negotiation.
Level 2 players.
Yep.
Who are they?
They're the people who are behind the scenes, the ones who aren't actually at the negotiating table, but who have a lot of influence over the decision-making process.
Okay, so it's like the puppet masters.
Yeah, kind of. And Voss says that it's really important to try to identify those level 2 players and understand their motivations.
Because if you can get them on your side, it can make a big difference in the outcome of the negotiation.
Exactly. And finally, Voss talks about the concept of black swans.
Black swans. Like the birds?
No, not the birds. He's talking about those unexpected events that can completely change the course of a negotiation.
Oh, like a sudden shift in the market or a new piece of information that comes to light?
Exactly. And Voss says that it's really important to be aware of the possibility of black swans and to be prepared to adjust your strategy accordingly.
Because if you're not, you could get caught flat-footed.
Exactly. So those are some of the key takeaways from Never Split the Difference. It's a really fascinating book, and it's packed with practical advice that you can use in your own life.
And if you're interested in learning more about negotiation or any other topic that we've covered on the channel, make sure to check out our other videos.
We've got deep dives on all sorts of topics, from psychology to business to self-improvement.
And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on any of our future content.
Thanks for watching.
See you next time.